Hi there. I'm Ellen, the psychological science side of Bless This Mess, a modern guide to faith and parenting in a chaotic world. Now that Molly and I have a bunch of book talks under our belts, we've noticed some themes in the Q&A sessions that keep coming up again and again, and we thought that it might be fun to take a go at answering some of those questions here to reach a wider audience. So you can swipe to the left now to see my first attempt at answering one of the more frequent questions that we've been getting, and check back here to see Molly's take on this or another question soon. And if you have questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to post them in the comments or tweet them at us, or go to our website, blessthismessparenting.com, and you can fill out our contact form and send us a question that way too. So the first question I'm going to tackle is getting on the same page with your co-parent. So swipe to see my take on that one. So one question that we've gotten a lot is, how do I get on the same page as my co-parent? And if you've had a chance to read the book, then you know that we talk a lot about a sort of a style and approach to parenting that we call the Holy Trinity of parenting. And when parents are asking us this question, a lot of times it's not so much about a particular parenting technique, but more about kind of an entire style of parenting. You know, I've read the book and I kind of want to take this on, but how do I get my co-parent on board with me? Or we see things differently. How do we get on the same page? That sort of thing. I think the first sort of thing to think about is that our kids really experience us in a way, if we have a co-parent in the picture, as almost like three separate parents, right? There's you as an individual, there's your co-parent as an individual, and then there's you as a co-parenting unit. Kids are flexible. They can be okay with different styles of parenting, and there's more than one healthy way to parent. We really try to get that across in the book. And it can even be good for them to sort of experience slightly different ways of doing things or different routines with one parent versus another. It can make them more resilient and more flexible. But I think when parents ask this question, a lot of times what they're really getting at is, what if we just see this whole thing differently? What if we have different values and different ideas about the parent-child relationship? How do we get on the same page? And what I would say about that is that first, much like you do with your kids, pick your battles. So if it's really just about, one of us kind of approaches bedtime in this way and another in that way, or we have different times for bedtime, that might not be a hill you want to die on. But if you are finding that you can't or aren't on the same page about things that are threats to your values as a parent, or that are threats to the relationship between you and your child, or that you worry is a threat to the relationship between your partner and your child, those are things you probably do want to address. A values example might be around sibling conflict. Say your kids get into it physically when they're fighting, and it's your value to respect one another's bodies and body integrity, and that we as a family don't solve problems through physical aggression and violence. Then that might be something that, if you see your co-parent being a lot more permissive around, that you really want to tackle and really want to address, because it's a difference in parenting that's a threat to a core value that you want to be part of your family's core values. And the goal always is to know that you can do things differently, but you don't want to be undermining one another. And I think the way that you can kind of approach this, if you're not on the same page, is to say, here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that when you say X, Y, or Z, or do X, Y, or Z, it kind of undermines what I'm trying to do over here. Or I worry that when you kind of go at the kids in that way, or lay into them right away about homework, that it could be damaging to your relationship with them, that they see you more as a nag or a threat than as a support, just as an example. But really naming the worry behind the difference in approach, I think, can be really helpful. Unfortunately, sometimes it's hard or impossible or even dangerous to try to get on the same page if you're not maybe still in a relationship with your co-parent, or there's a lot of tension or animosity there. That can certainly be really, really hard. And in that case, my first response is, I'm just really sorry, because that can be really painful and really stressful. I often go back to one of my favorite entries by Cheryl Strayed from her Dear Sugar columns in her collection of articles, Tiny Beautiful Things, where she's talking to a single mom about how hard to keep working to keep her child's father involved in the child's life. And she reminds the writer that it all comes out in the reckoning. And every kid is going to grow up to have to reckon with the parenting that they had. And oftentimes, when I'm struggling with what to do with my kids, I just go back to that and I say, where do I want to be in the reckoning? And I can't change other people's behavior. I can't worry too much about where my co-parent will be in the reckoning. I can only control my own actions. And if I am worried about where my partner will be in the reckoning, then I can name that, and I can name that worry. And that's a much more respectful, kind of compassionate stance than saying you're doing it wrong, or let's do it this way, or we should be doing it this way. Because there actually aren't a whole lot of shoulds in parenting. We're all trying to figure it out together. As Molly and I often say, we're all in this mess together. So that's kind of my quick take on how to get on the same page as your co-parent. Pick your battles. Only focus on differences of values and threats to values, threats to the relationship. Yeah. And if folks have more specific questions about that, comment. We'll try and answer them. And look back soon, because I think we'll ask Molly to answer the other frequent question that comes up often around co-parenting, which is, what if one of you is into church and the other isn't? So check back soon to see Molly's take on that one. Thanks, everybody.